This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
Hello, football fans, and welcome to the Onside Kick. My name is Ricky Widmer. As always, I'm joined by the Mark Weber.
Dub them ease.
And if you're on blogtalkradio.com, thank you for tuning in, listening to us today. If you're on SoundCloud, don't forget, as of October 1st, we're going to be bye-bye from the SoundClouds. You got to go to blogtalkradio.com/The Onside Kick to get all your Onside Kick podcasts in October and beyond. And if you're on YouTube, hey guys, how's it going? You didn't see us. Mark waved. Okay. I was going to say, Mark waved at everybody. But he already did that. We got a jam-packed show for you guys as always. We're going to be talking some Tyrod Taylor. Got a new deal with the Buffalo Bills. We also got the Cleveland Browns. I was shocked that Mark came in today and was like, I want to talk some Cleveland Browns. So we're going to talk some Cleveland Brown offense more specifically.
It was raining here today, so it was kind of gloomy and sad. So I figured we might as well talk about the Browns.
We're living like a Cleveland fan usually lives. And then the last topic, we're going to dive into some fantasy football. I'm going to try to throw some fantasy football in from now until the beginning of the season. Going to look at Ezekiel Elliott and where he should go in your fantasy drafts. But Mark, let's start off with this Buffalo Bills Tyrod Taylor contract. It's a 6-year deal that's worth $92 million. When you saw that this deal went across the table, what was your first kind of like your first reaction to it?
Well, I think it's a bit of it's back and forth. It's a bit of an overreaction because it's just one season of Tyrod Taylor. You know, it's really all they have. And yeah, it was a great season for him. But you know, you have no clue if this is your main guy. And you had a guy like Cardale Jones, who some people were excited about. A lot of people thought that he's got potential developmental quarterback type of abilities that you can develop him into something great. And you look at this and you're saying, well, they didn't overpay. You know, they really got fair market value for a guy like Tyrod Taylor, especially if he continues to progress and continues to be better. But I just sit there and I think, Rex Ryan, I know he didn't make this contract happen, but Rex Ryan all in here. He's got this one season. They made sure they got that quarterback. They've tried to put as much around him as they can. They've been trying to get this defense to be as solid as possible. They're doing everything they can to add to this great run attack and really make Rex Ryan's only chance happen. I just think, hey, bit of a little too soon, a little premature, but I don't hate what they're doing.
Well, that's what I immediately thought of was, wait a second. You want to give this quarterback big time money, but if you don't make the playoffs, you're going to get rid of your head coach, basically getting a new guy coming in
who might want his own quarterback.
Who's going to want a new guy? Let's be honest. Let's say like maybe a 10% that when you get a guy coming in, unless it's a Tom Brady, a Peyton Manning, a Andrew Luck, I'm even going to throw Blake Bortles out there. If it's a quarterback like that, 9 times out of 10, you're sitting there going, I want my own guy. You're not my guy. Get out of town.
For sure. And they might be like kind of transitional of, okay, you can hang out for a year and let's see what happens. But eventually they're going to want their guy who fits their system. Tyrod Taylor might not be the guy who fits, Coach X's system in that case. So really, they're all in, man. They really need to get to the playoffs, and it's going to be hard as hell.
And I mean, Tyrod, I got the stats for him in front of me, and he played 14 games last season. Good accuracy. I mean, 63%, almost 64% completion accuracy, over 3,000 yards. The best thing he did was 20 touchdowns to the 6 INTs, about 12.5 yards per completion, 216, almost 217 yards per game, and had a QBR of 67.84. So, I mean, maybe the QBR, you're sitting there going, hey, maybe I want a quarterback with a higher QBR than that, but all the other things, if you get those numbers from a Rex Ryan quarterback, you're in good shape. You're in, okay, I'm not going to say good shape. I'm going to say you're in okay shape. You need other things around you, like a run game
like
and some
one of the
receivers
best
to help you.
Yeah, like one of the best run games in the league last year. You know, the thing that the Buffalo Bills need to really become that Rex Ryan dream team is the defense to take that step forward. Because Tyrod Taylor doesn't need to be amazing. He just needs to game manage and do enough. You know, and for Tyrod Taylor, a guy who can use his legs a little bit too, that's the cherry on top right there. So the defense, if they step up a little bit, if they get that going, you know, that's why they get a guy like Shaq Lawson. That's why they drafted a Reggie Ragland. You know, they go for defense for the first 3 picks before grabbing Cardale Jones, which of course now if you're going to give Tyrod Taylor this big deal, I don't really understand drafting Cardale Jones, but whatever. These were different days that these things happened. But you know, they're doing what they need to do. The problem that the Buffalo Bills have is just that they are in too good of a division because the Patriots pretty much always have it locked up. And now that Fitzmagic is back, the Jets are a good team. So there's 2 teams who are either ahead of you or right at the same spot you are for this division. It's tough. This is way too hard. It's not like they can sit there and say we should easily be able to win this division. They're just struggling to make a wild card spot.
And that's the main thing. And I'm pulling up right now. I've got my little link with every single team, the records. By the way, guys, next week we're going to have another video podcast here for the Onside Kick. We're going to do our official hold us to them kind of divisional predictions and playoff predictions. And someone's going to get the kiss of death. That's just going to happen next week. But I mean, I look at this division. I'll give you guys a little spoiler alert, a little sneak peek into what I'm thinking. I've got 3 teams in the AFC East as of right now that are double-digit wins, except one of them sitting at home, and that's the Buffalo Bills. Still a 10-6 team this year as of right now. Could change next week. I've got that week to kind of fiddle around with it, but they're still sitting at home because the Raiders are going to be double digits. The Jets are going to be good this year. The Patriots are going to win the AFC East yet again. That's going to happen. So it's like you were saying, yeah, tough division, but then they've got teams from the outside. Now I have the Bengals taking a step back as of right now. I'm not quite sure how the Texans are going to look, how the Jaguars are going to look. I'm even going to throw the Raiders in there. I'll take the Jaguars out just with Texans, Raiders, and Bengals. Steelers, depending on which one wins that division, that's 3 teams that are going to vie for that 6th wild card spot against you.
For sure. It's a challenging thing to do. And none of this really has to do with Tyrod Taylor. You know, Tyrod did as much as he could last season to perform and to prove himself. And part of it wants you to think that it's just the quarterback desperation. Every team is so desperate to have a franchise quarterback that a Kirk Cousins can just put up 1 season and get a franchise tag, you know, and demand big money. Tyrod Taylor can put up these 14 games where he looked good. He definitely did, but we have no clue anything else, and he can go get himself a good deal. Brock Osweiler, all he's got to do is come in when Peyton gets hurt, do pretty well with the best defense in the NFL, and then he can go and get himself a big boy contract in Houston. Every team is so desperate when they think they just maybe have found him, they go and get him.
I love that you're using that word. I love that you're using desperate because I got a quote here from Colin Cowherd, of all people.
Of course.
And on his show with Jason Whitlock, Speak for Yourself, he even talked about this. And I'm just taking, it's a longer quote, but I'm going to take the little short and sweet one. And it starts out, at this time last year, it was a backup. This is Buffalo. Certain cities in America are low self-esteem sports cities. Cleveland and Buffalo. Ryan Fitzpatrick is good for a half. Keys to the city. Mario Williams wants to play for us. Keys to the city. This is ridiculous. And it's one of those things where I'm not on the same page of, I'm not saying this contract is ridiculous because of what Colin is saying. Is he wrong? Not 100%. Because there are cities that are desperate for quarterbacks where it's like, just fuck it, we'll take whatever we can get. I say that this is ridiculous only because of the fact you may fire your coach at the end of the year. That's why this is ridiculous.
It's really just a poor team management.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make sense to do that, to say, unless they're going to back down and they're not going to fire Rex. And you know what? But he did perform well enough.
I can see that now. I feel like now that you made this move, you have to go ahead and do that. Because if you don't, then it's like,
it doesn't make
why
sense.
did we make this move? Tyrod's either going to end up getting cut after 2 years or end up getting traded.
For sure. It's just... And you know what? Maybe he'll be good enough to get traded for something. Maybe some team's going to want him. But really, what it comes down to is it's the haves and the have-nots. If you are a team, if you're a city that does not have a quarterback that's in that upper tier, if you don't have like a top 10 quarterback, you are desperate and willing to take anything. And Tyrod Taylor's not bad. That's the thing. He is not bad. He is a good quarterback. He proved his worth last year. But can he do it again? We don't know, but the Bills have to take a shot. They have to just blindly trust that he'll be able to repeat that next year and the following year and for the next 6 years, really. Because they can't risk it. They can't risk going back to having nobody. They can't risk having E.J. Manuel again. Or hoping that Cardale Jones does it.
Now they got Cardale. And I mean, if the thing happens, as of right now, like I said, if my thing happens and you're 10-6 and miss the playoffs, then what? You're 18, 19, you're that 15 to 19 draft pick. What's that going to get you? A Paxton Lynch? That kind of a quarter? Like if I'm basing it off of last year, what, you're going to get a Paxton Lynch or Connor Cook?
In that case, they're committed. They're already committed to Tyrod Taylor for 5 more years. And I'm sure that they're not going to have to stick there for 5 years for the whole contract. But, in that case, quarterback's not really what their worry is.
That's some big money for a guy who's only performed for you for 1 season, though.
For sure. But that's not surprising because Kirk Cousins got himself that franchise. Brock Osweiler went and got himself that deal. I know you would like to say this type of stuff too, and a lot of people feel this way about Jay Cutler, but a guy who got his deal purely based off of potential. There's a lot of these type of quarterbacks that don't really... think about Ryan Tannehill. When has Ryan Tannehill ever performed? When has he ever proved that he was worth the money that he got?
I think he's a different story.
It's just quarterback desperation.
He may be on the end, but the one thing I want to do is today when I was kind of thinking about this, and this isn't like this is a carbon copy to these two stats, but I was kind of thinking like, okay, when Rex was with New York, how did their quarterback, how did he perform? Because it was one of those things with Mark Sanchez. He was one of the highest paid Jets rookies at the time, and he got that 5-year. That was before we had the kind of salary cap for rookies coming out, and there were 2 seasons, only 2 years that he had over 3,000 yards, and I'm just taking his best because to me, out of all the stats I look at, there are more comparable stats to Tyrod, where Tyrod did play less games, 2 less, but he had better completion by about 7%. He had less yards by 400. 3,474 was Mark Sanchez that year in 2011. 26 to 18 touchdown to INT. So, yes, you're in that 20 touchdown range. Of course, Tyrod didn't turn the ball over. That was one of the best things he did. Comparable yards per completion. Tyrod getting almost a yard more per completion. However, Mark Sanchez got a yard more per game. And then QBR, this is the weird thing, though. I know Mark Sanchez's QBR was 34.37. However, the thing you got to take into consideration there is that was the first year they used QBR, and they adjusted it 2 years later, and then they adjusted it right before this past season. So a little tinkering, but the thing I found most kind of jarring about that is both of those teams, 8-8, missed the playoffs. Both of them had a running back where Mark Sanchez had Sean Green, who was an 1,000-yard rusher. LaShawn McCoy didn't rush for 1,000 yards, but a solid running back. In the receiving game over here, Mark Sanchez had 2 guys over 1,000 yards, and Plexico, Burris, and blanking on his name. I'm going to look it up in a second because I got it in front of me. However, Tyrod Taylor, 1,000-yard receiver, and Sammy Watkins.
Yeah, for sure. I think the things that kind of jump out to me, obviously the interceptions. I mean, Tyrod Taylor did much better than that.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, I think there's like a 7% difference in completion.
Yeah, 63.7 to 56.7.
Yeah, that's a big jump. We're also assuming that in those two games that this is the difference. Tyrod Taylor, if you want to get even, he's six touchdowns behind. So that's 3 touchdowns a game. And that's a lot to ask for.
But he did play 2 less games.
That's what I'm saying. It's a lot to assume that in 2 games he would have thrown 3 touchdowns each.
And that's the thing I was looking at. It was Santonio Holmes and Plexico Burris were the wide receivers. Also, Dustin Keller was there to catch passes, had about 800 yards that season for the Jets. Tyrod's main receiver was Sammy Watkins because Robert Woods was kind of
For sure. They're definitely comparable, but I don't think it's definitely not apples to apples. It's definitely not a fair, just straightforward look at these two guys type of comparison. The best thing Rex Ryan has going for him, this guy's not throwing interceptions because that's what ruined Mark Sanchez, besides the butt fumble, and Tim Tebow. That's what ruined Mark Sanchez in New York. He just threw too many interceptions. And for a guy like Tyrod Taylor to be pretty close to, Aaron Rodgers when it comes to interceptions last year, it's good company to be keeping, for sure. I just think that when it comes down to it, I don't think they're dumb for giving him this contract because they had to do it. Like I said, the quarterback desperation out there, they don't have anybody. They don't want to go back to just drafting whoever they can get. So they got to do something in that case. But really, it just to me seems like the Buffalo Bills just don't know what they're doing as an organization. Well, they're getting all the pieces and then putting this random time limit on it.
If I'm a Bills fan, I am praying, I am hoping you guys got to make the playoffs. That's what you got to do. You have to make the playoffs because if Rex Ryan isn't here next year, things aren't going to be well because Coach X coming in isn't going to want Tyrod.
Hope that the organization's got no balls and they're not going to actually live up to their word. Hope that they're going to go, oh, you know what, 9-7's not bad. I know we didn't make the playoffs and we said we'd fire you, but it's not bad.
I want to throw this at you, and this is before we'll move on. If you're the Bills, you're in the front office, you're making the decision, fire or keep them. You finish 10-6, miss the playoffs. You keep them or fire them. Stand by your word or say, you know what, 10-6 is good, however, we didn't make the playoffs.
Honestly, lose-lose situation because if you go back on your word, then you've gone back on your word. Talk is cheap. You cannot be one of these talk is cheap kind of people. Actions speak louder than words. You have to actually follow through on these things. You really do. But the thing is, if you follow through, you look like a fucking idiot because you just got rid of a guy who got you to 10-6 purely because you were too prideful. Your ego was too big. You said this thing. But if you don't do it, then you're the guy who randomly called out your coach and said, if you don't make the playoffs next year, you're fired. You didn't make the playoffs? That's the parent that sets up this, if you get one more F in school, I'm going to take that phone away. They come back with an F the next day. Well, maybe one more F. One more F and I'll take your phone away. Because
that phone is getting taken away.
What are they going to do?
I tell you what, that phone's getting taken away.
What are the Bills going to do in this situation if they don't get rid of Rex Ryan and say, okay, fine, 10-6 is fine, but you better make the playoffs next year. And if you don't, you're going to get fired.
Here's the only thing. That analogy that you used isn't that great for this football side of it because if they're 10-6, I think you got to keep them.
But the thing is just saying that you're not living up to your word. You're not backing up your words with action.
And that goes...
And you can't do that.
And
because in that situation... Well, in that situation, the kid is going to, in the parent situation that we have, the kid is going to know, I don't have to care. I can walk all over this person. The players, the coaches, the NFL as a whole will not have respect if you don't live up to your word.
So it looks like this contract may be a lose-lose situation for the Bills if they don't make the playoffs. But
Bills are a lose-lose situation.
You guys let us know down below what you guys think of this contract.